In the ancient days, before Israel crowned its kings, there were times when the people of God found themselves leaderless, vulnerable, and constantly harassed by surrounding enemies. They were far from their glorious days under Moses and Joshua, and now their sins left them open to plunder, subjugation, and relentless attack. It was in these dark days that God would raise up judges, deliverers chosen by Him to rescue Israel from their distress. Among these judges was a woman named Deborah, a prophetess and the only female judge recorded in the Bible. She was wise beyond her years, her leadership respected by men and women alike, and her judgments considered divine. Under her shade, beneath the palm of Deborah in the hill country of Ephraim, she would settle disputes and guide the people of Israel in their darkest hours. Deborah's presence was magnetic. Sitting beneath the towering palm of Deborah, her gaze stretched far beyond the disputes of the people who came to seek her wisdom. Her eyes seemed to pierce the heavens, as though in constant communion with the Almighty. From the villages and cities, men and women alike came to her, seeking her judgment on matters of the heart, land, and family. The words that fell from her lips were not just counsel, but prophecy, filled with divine clarity and authority. Unlike the other judges before her, Deborah was no warrior by trade, but her leadership was undisputed. Israel had no king, but under Deborah's governance they had something more powerful, a leader chosen by God, a prophetess whose every decision carried the weight of heaven. But even as she led the people, Deborah was troubled. The shadow of Canaan loomed large, and the iron fist of King Jabin held Israel in a cruel vice. Word of Sisera's chariots had spread like wildfire. Each chariot was a metal beast, capable of mowing down dozens of men in a single sweep, and Sisera commanded hundreds. No one dared to stand against him. Fear gnawed at the hearts of the Israelites as they remembered the bloodshed and destruction of those who had previously dared to defy the Canaanite forces. And yet, as Deborah prayed under the palm, a message came to her, not of despair, but of deliverance. God was ready to act, and He had chosen her to lead His people to victory. Israel's rebellion and the oppression of King Jabin. The Israel of old had drifted far from the days of glory and miracles. The memory of the Red Sea parting, the walls of Jericho falling, and the victories under Joshua had faded. Generation after generation, the people turned their back on God, chasing after idols and false gods. They forgot the one who had brought them out of slavery in Egypt, and in return they suffered the consequences of their disobedience. King Jabin of Canaan, a ruthless tyrant, took full advantage of Israel's weakened state. His kingdom stretched from Hazor, a powerful fortress city, and he ruled with an iron grip. But it was his commander, Sisera, who struck fear into the hearts of men. Sisera's iron chariots, each glinting in the sunlight, were like thunder on the battlefield. No army in Israel could withstand the sight of them. For 20 long, bitter years, Israel was crushed under Canaanite rule. Every harvest, Jabin's soldiers came to collect the best of the crops, leaving the Israelites with barely enough to survive. Families mourned as Sisera's warriors dragged men off to slavery, and the cries of the people rose to heaven, pleading for mercy. But Israel's God is not one who ignores the cries of the oppressed. Though their rebellion had led them into this misery, God, in His infinite mercy, would not abandon His people. And in their darkest hour, He raised up Deborah. Amidst the turmoil of Israel's oppression, God chose another key figure to stand alongside Deborah, Barak, the son of Abinoam. A warrior from the tribe of Naphtali, Barak had a reputation as a capable leader and fighter, someone who could rally the men of Israel in the face of danger. But Barak too had become wary of Sisera's vast army and iron chariots. Deborah, acting under God's guidance, sent for Barak to deliver a message that would not only challenge his faith, but also change the course of Israel's future. Sitting beneath the palm tree that served as her place of judgment, Deborah summoned Barak and delivered God's command. Barak was no stranger to war. His muscles bore the scars of past battles, and his hands were hardened from years of wielding a sword. But as Deborah delivered God's command, Barak's heart quaked. Not because he lacked courage, but because he had seen the destruction that Sisera's army could bring. Sisera's name alone was enough to cause seasoned warriors to tremble. How could a ragtag force of 10,000 men from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun stand a chance? When Deborah looked at Barak, it was with eyes filled with fire and unwavering certainty. "Has not the Lord, the God of Israel, commanded you?" Her voice cut through Barak's doubts like a blade. Barak, though a warrior, hesitated. Even though he was full of fear, he knew one thing. If Deborah, God's chosen prophetess, was by his side, then there was hope. He could not go into battle without the assurance of God's presence, and in Deborah he saw that presence. So he made his request. "If you go with me, I will go. But if you do not go with me, I will not go." Barak's request shows both faith and fear. He believed in Deborah's connection with God, but perhaps doubted his own ability to succeed without her presence. It wasn't the first time a leader in Israel had hesitated when called by God. Like Moses before him, Barak needed reassurance. Without missing a beat, Deborah agreed to go with him, but she gave Barak a prophetic warning. "Very well, I will go with you. But know this, because of your request, the victory will not be yours. Sisera will fall, but at the hands of a woman." Barak's heart beat with renewed strength. He knew the odds were still against them, but Deborah's presence was enough to propel him forward. The stage was set for one of the most extraordinary battles in Israel's history. The army of Israel stood on the summit of Mount Tabor, 10,000 strong. Below them, on the plains near the river Kishon, Sisera's forces gathered, thousands of men with 900 iron chariots gleaming under the sun. The odds were insurmountable, and for a moment fear threatened to overwhelm the hearts of the Israelite soldiers. But Deborah stood firm, her face lifted to the heavens. Suddenly the weather began to shift. Thick clouds rolled in, darkening the skies above Sisera's army. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and before long the heavens opened. Rain poured down in sheets, drenching the plains and swelling the Kishon River. What had once been solid ground turned to thick, clinging mud. Sisera's chariots, his greatest weapon, became his downfall. The wheels that had crushed so many now sank into the earth, immobilized. Horses struggled to pull them free, but only sank deeper. Sisera's men, once confident and boastful, were now in disarray, shouting orders that were swallowed by the storm's fury. "Now Barak!" Deborah shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Barak led the charge, his army rushing down the slopes of Mount Tabor with a cry that shook the heavens. The Israelites struck with such force that Sisera's army broke apart, men fleeing in every direction, leaving behind their once mighty chariots. As the Israelites pursued, the Canaanite soldiers fell one by one, until none remained. Victory was certain. But Sisera himself had escaped, abandoning his troops and fleeing for his life. The unexpected defeat of Sisera, Jael's bold act. Sisera ran through the wilderness, his heart pounding in his chest. Sweat and rain mixed on his brow as he stumbled upon the encampment of Heber the Kenite. There he found Jael, Heber's wife, standing at the entrance of her tent. Her face was calm, her demeanor welcoming. "Come, my lord," Jael said softly. "Come right in. Don't be afraid." Exhausted beyond measure, Sisera entered the tent, collapsing onto the ground. He demanded water, but Jael, in an act of feigned hospitality, gave him warm milk instead. As he drank, his eyelids grew heavy, and within moments he was fast asleep. But Jael's mind was sharp and her intentions clear. While Sisera slept, Jael took a tent peg and a hammer, her hands steady and her movements precise. With one swift strike, she drove the peg through Sisera's temple, pinning him to the ground. When Barak arrived in pursuit, Jael met him at the entrance of the tent, her voice calm as she said, "Come, I will show you the man you are looking for." Inside, Sisera lay dead, the terror of Israel, slain by the hands of a woman. The news of Sisera's death spread like wildfire across Israel. It wasn't just a victory, it was a symbol of God's undeniable intervention. A commander who once ruled the battlefield with fear had fallen, not by the hands of a mighty warrior, but by the boldness of a woman named Jael. The Israelites gathered to celebrate, but for Deborah and Barak, the victory was not simply about Sisera's defeat. It was about the salvation of Israel. Together they raised their voices in song, a song that would echo through the generations. In the song, Deborah praises the leaders who stepped up to fight and the people who volunteered for battle. She recounts how the stars fought from the heavens and the river Kishon swept Sisera's forces away, making it clear that it was God's hand that had secured the victory. As they sang, the history of Israel's deliverance unfolded before their eyes. Deborah's words painted vivid images of the mountains quaking before the Lord, of warriors rising up, and of God himself marching in battle alongside his people. The victory wasn't theirs alone. It was God's. The heavens had fought for them, and the earth had swallowed their enemies. Nature itself had become an instrument in the hands of the Almighty, raining down judgment upon Sisera's forces. But Deborah's song was not only a celebration, it was also a call to remembrance. She sang of the tribes who answered the call to battle, those who risked their lives for freedom. Yet she also called out the tribes who stayed behind, who watched from afar and refused to join the fight. Her song was both a praise and a warning, a reminder that in the war between good and evil, neutrality is never an option. The final verses of her song were dedicated to Jael, the woman who had brought the ultimate victory. Most blessed of women be Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, most blessed of tent-dwelling women. Deborah's voice softened as she sang of Sisera's mother waiting at home, peering through her window, wondering why her son's chariot had not yet returned. Her ladies offered false hope, imagining Sisera dividing the spoils of war, unaware that he would never return. The contrast between the brutal reality of battle and the false expectations of the enemy's camp brought a somber note to the song. As the final notes echoed through the crowd, Israel stood in awe. This was not just a victory over Sisera, it was a victory over the oppression that had bound them for decades. And it was a victory led by Deborah, the woman who had listened to the voice of God and dared to act when all others had faltered. The land of Israel had peace for 40 years. Deborah's story did not end with the battle. Her legacy endured far beyond her time, shaping the very fabric of Israel's history. She was more than just a judge, she was a prophetess, a leader, and a mother to her nation. Under her leadership, Israel experienced a rare season of peace and prosperity. The people flourished, free from the tyranny of foreign rule. But Deborah knew that peace was a fragile thing, easily shattered by forgetfulness. So she continued to lead with wisdom and strength, reminding Israel of their God and the covenant they had sworn to keep. Her example became a beacon for generations to come. In a time when women were often relegated to the background, Deborah stood tall, not only in her own right, but as a reminder that God's calling transcends gender, status, and expectations. She showed that when God chooses someone to lead, no societal barriers can stand in the way. Deborah's name would be remembered in the annals of Israel's history as a symbol of divine courage and justice. Her story inspired future generations of women and men alike, reminding them that when God calls, the only response is to rise up and follow. The Palm of Deborah became a place of pilgrimage, where people would come to remember the day when God turned the tide of history through the obedience of one woman and the bravery of those who followed her. The story of Deborah is not just a tale of battle and victory. It's a testament to what happens when ordinary people trust in an extraordinary God. It's a story of faith in the face of impossible odds, of a woman who dared to believe that her people could be free, and of a God who never fails to deliver on his promises. In the end, Deborah's story reminds us all that no matter how dark the times may seem, God is always at work, raising up leaders, orchestrating deliverance, and bringing justice to the oppressed. And sometimes those leaders come from the most unexpected places, like the palm tree where a prophetess sat and listened to the voice of God. Deborah's song may have ended, but the melody of her story continues. Her legacy lives on in every person who chooses faith over fear, obedience over doubt, and action over apathy. Will you rise to the challenge? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful biblical stories, insights, and teachings. Together, we can uncover the mysteries of the Bible and see how these ancient truths apply to our lives today. Stay tuned for our next feature on Testament Tales, where we'll dive into more untold stories and hidden mysteries from the Word of God. Let's walk in faith, fight with courage, and trust in God, just like Deborah.